I now give the floor to the Russian Federation.
President, Russia is against any military activity which threatens the security of the Korean Peninsula and countries in Northeast Asia. We are convinced that mutually acceptable political and diplomatic solutions is the only possible way of peacefully resolving the issues in the Korean Peninsula and establishing in Northeast Asia sound security mechanisms. This should be our main task, and resolving it will allow for a normalization of the situation in the region. We note with regret that over the last 4 years, the Council has not found the strength to react to North Korea's dismantling of its nuclear test site, as well as Pyongyang's compliance with the moratorium on nuclear testing and launching of intercontinental ballistic missiles. In each of its resolutions on the DPRK since 2006, the Council has expressed its readiness to review restrictions depending on the extent to which Pyongyang fulfills the provisions of the relevant documents. Unfortunately, so far, the Council has only tightened restrictions, ignoring the positive signals from North Korea. In this connection, these current developments are largely the consequence of short-sightedness of some colleagues here who are not ready to move beyond the paradigm of sanctions, which for many years have not been able to guarantee security in the region. We haven't heard any other viable initiatives from them either. We also believe that further sanctions on DPRK would already be beyond measures simply to cut off the channels of financing for prohibited nuclear missile programs and threatens North Korean citizens with unacceptable social, economic and humanitarian difficulties. We'd like to remind our American colleagues that negotiations are a two-way street. It is completely pointless to expect unconditional disarmament from Pyongyang with the threat of tightening the vice of sanctions and with guarantees of promises that aren't backed up. Creating new military blocs in the region, such as the group of the US, UK and Australia, is cause of great doubts as to the good intentions of these countries, including on the side of Pyongyang, and does not help with fostering dialogue. The institutes and mechanisms of the UN and its Security Council should be used to support the processes for resolving and resolution and inter-Korean dialogue, and not be a barrier thereto. Only then can we'll be able to talk about effective resolution of the problems accrued in the region, including nuclear ones, on the basis of dialogue and mutually acceptable agreements. Sanctions and pressure will not achieve this. Even greater resentment is caused by so-called standalone secondary sanctions against the DPRK and other states imposed by Washington and their allies above and beyond UN Security Council sanctions. Unilateral restrictions don't only trample on the sovereignty and legitimate interests of member states and run counter to the norms and rules of international trade, but they also undermine the integrity of restrictions agreed within the Security Council. It is unacceptable to try and sanctify this kind of restrictions using the authority of the Security Council or its 1718 Committee on the DPRK. In this connection, we call on all to exercise restraint and, in practice, reaffirm readiness for renewed dialogue in line with previous agreements and obligations. The Russian-Chinese draft Security Council political humanitarian resolution remains on the table. It could encourage parties to step up their negotiation efforts. At the same time, we would like to note that a lack of progress on the political track, which could have been provided by the aforementioned resolution, threatens to further increase tensions in the peninsula, which unfortunately we've seen in recent months. Thank you for your attention.
I thank the Russian Federation for their statement.